Shalom and welcome to TLV Talk. I'm Rabbi Mark Greenberg from the Tree of Life Bible Society.
And I'm Joseph Greenberg, and we are so glad to have you back with us. This week's Torah portion is Haazinu, which is basically starting in Deuteronomy chapter 32.
It is Deuteronomy chapter 32.
And it is, one of the last couple of Torah portions.
Right. It's second to the last. It is the Song of Moses, actually, which is a prophetic song of showing how incredible God is, and how incredibly our forefathers would fall away, and how they would come back to worship God again. And it's a typical believer story. Find God, everything is glorious, and backslide, and things go down into a pit. Right. And then you find the Lord again, and He brings you back up by His mercy. Amen. And so it's really a swan song of prophetically of what He's saying. This is what's to come, O you children of Israel. So it starts off by saying, give ear. In other words, that is Haazinu, saying, listen, you need to listen to what I'm about to tell you.
Right.
You really do. And He says, O heavens, and I will speak, let the earth hear the words of my mouth, and may my teaching trickle like rain, and my speech distill like dew. So He's saying He is going to proclaim Adonai's name and ascribe greatness to the God of Israel. And He goes through that until...
It's got some great quotes in the song.
Yeah, please, bring some of them out, Joe.
I mean, you can read the whole thing, but I'll just point out a couple of stuff. Just starting in verse 3, for I will proclaim Adonai's name, ascribe greatness to our God. It reminds me much of Psalm 29, right? That word ascribe, right? Used multiple times. It says, the rock, blameless is His work.
And by the way, the rock in our Bible is capitalized. It's a capitalized
it's
pronoun.
A title.
It's a title for the God of Israel.
Right. And there's actually, there's a very traditional Jewish song all about God.
Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages. So, there's...
and we're not talking about the School of Rock either.
No, we're not talking.
Okay.
And I just love where it keeps going. Indeed, all His ways are just. God of faithfulness without iniquity. Righteous and upright is He. So I just, it is phenomenal what He's talking about God, but you're right. It does get into some prophetic concepts of Israel falling away. It says... is this how you pay back Adonai, O foolish, unwise people? Isn't He your Father who ransomed you?
Exactly.
He made you and established you. And that verse ransomed, He's got some great stuff there that He's talking about.
And what verse was that found in?
Right in verse 6. And it's got the footnote is referring right to Matthew and 1 Timothy, this idea that Yeshua ransomed us, right? That our Savior paid the price. So a little bit of a new covenant connection there. But it goes on into talking about the fact that we are going to fall away, right? That's most of Moses' song.
And then he says, but once you fall away and once you gain wisdom to come back, in verse 29, He's saying, if they were wise, meaning the children of Israel, it could be you and I. You might as well put your name right in there because we've done this. Right. That they would discern this. They would understand their hereafter. How can one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and Adonai had handled them over? Surely their rock is not like our rock.
Yeah, and if you notice, the two are, one's not capitalized and one is capitalized. And what I love is it kind of goes into this idea of comparing our God with the gods. Right.
Of the day.
Of the gods of the day. And He says in verse 37, He will say, what are their gods? Lower G, the rock in quotations they took refuge in. Yes. It's almost like Moses is mocking these false gods that Israel, unfortunately, seems to over time lean towards instead of remembering what God brought them out of.
Well, here's even a more mocking line. He says here in verse 38, the second portion of verse 38, let them rise up and help you and be a shelter over you.
Yeah.
In other words, you can hear it in his voice, like only our God, only the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob will rise up and help you.
Right. And listen, Moses is old, and he's a little cranky.
Yeah.
He's a little cranky.
He is a bit.
And that is really how he feels. He is not pulling any punches. And in verse 39, he says, "See now that I am he. There is no other gods beside me." And it goes on to say, "I bring death and give life. I have wounded, but I will heal.
Right.
And none can rescue from my hand." So this idea that...
And the "my" is capitalized, so he's talking about God himself.
So, a lot of Moses' song, just like in last week's Torah portion, is talking about the fact that he's trying to warn Israel that the future is not exactly as bright as it could be.
Because I know how this is all going to go down.
Right.
I have prophetically seen that, and that's why Moses is considered a great prophet, because he did see these things. Right. But let's remember, Yeshua is that prophet like him, as we spoke about in Shoftim, in Deuteronomy 18, and even more of a prophet because he had that direct connection with the Father.
Right, and so essentially he, at the end of this week's Torah portion, or chapter 32, he's saying, he gathers Israel, the elders, Joshua, and says, "I'm holding these things against you." Meaning that I'm holding you accountable. And this is a term used often in these last few chapters of Deuteronomy. And just here it says, "Put in your hearts all the words that I call as a witness against you today,
exactly right.
that you may command your children to keep and do all the words of this Torah, for it is not an empty thing for you, because it is your life." And I think Moses is trying to say, listen, this is not just prophecy. This is your life we're talking about.
Exactly.
Don't throw it away.
Exactly, and I think that as we move towards new covenant space, we find that urging by mothers, that urging by fathers to bring that to their children, because it's one of the things that the Bible Society really promotes, and that's intergenerational faith transfer.
Right, and it's all over the Torah. I mean, we've been reading about it the last few weeks. Every single Torah portion has talked about teach your kids the Torah, teach your kids the Torah. It just is a consistent theme. Exactly.
Well, listen, our time has ended. Thank you for joining us. Next week we talk about the blessing of Moses and how he blesses the 12 tribes. So with that, God bless you. Please go to our website, www.tlvbiblesociety.org. Lots of resources and articles there, and we hope to see you soon.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.